One winter night, Jeremy, living an ordinary life working at a gas station, had no idea that everything was about to change because of an accident. To save a life, he had to overcome his own pain and limitations. But this brave act brought him not only gratitude but also an unexpected opportunity. Get ready for an inspiring story of sacrifice, hope, and a second chance. Jeremy was 30 years old and going through one of the toughest times of his life. He used to be a talented chef, spending hours in the kitchen with passion. But a bitter divorce had changed everything. During this painful period, he lost not just his family but also his stability and dreams. It felt as if life had completely collapsed on him. As if that wasn't enough, he had an accident at the restaurant where he worked and broke his left arm. That day, while doing inventory in the kitchen, the ladder he was on suddenly slipped, and he fell to the ground. The pain in his arm was unbearable, but even worse was the way his workplace turned its back on him. He didn't receive any compensation and eventually had to quit his job. Months later, Jeremy started working the night shift at a nearly forgotten gas station between two small towns. This job was unfamiliar compared to his previous life, but he had no other choice. On cold winter nights, in the silence of the gas station, he often felt lonely and exhausted. The working conditions were tough, but at least he was grateful. Given the state of his arm, finding a job anywhere else was nearly impossible. As the difficult nights went by, Jeremy's arm slowly started to heal. He held on to a small glimmer of hope that life could eventually get better. The promise he made to himself kept him going. Once his arm fully healed, he would work here a little longer to save some money and then start looking for a job as a chef again. Jeremy was spending another cold winter night inside the gas station. The snowstorm had intensified, and the wind made a faint howling sound against the windows. Taking a tired breath, he sipped his coffee. The night shift, especially during winter, felt almost unbearable, but Jeremy considered this job an opportunity. As he stood by the window watching the outside world, a sudden violent crash echoed through the night. The sound of metal crunching and then the eerie silence that followed. His heart began to race. Peering outside, he spotted a car on the snow-covered road, smashed into a tree. Smoke was rising from the hood. His mind instantly went into high alert. Grabbing his coat, he bolted out the door. The snowfall had become heavier, blanketing the road in white. The wind stung his face, but Jeremy pressed on toward the car with determination. When he reached the vehicle, he noticed the windows were fogged up. From inside, a faint voice called out, "Please? Help me." Jeremy quickly checked the driver's side door. It was jammed shut from the impact. Smoke from the engine was thickening, a clear sign that time was running out. He hurried to the other side and managed to open the back door. Leaning inside, he saw a woman trapped in the front seat. "Don't worry, I'm going to get you out of here," Jeremy said, trying to stay calm. The woman was panicked, her breathing irregular. "My leg. It's stuck. I can't move," she whimpered. Jeremy quickly assessed the situation. Her leg was pinned under a twisted metal panel, and the seatbelt was keeping her firmly in place. Sparks were becoming more visible near the engine, making the urgency of the situation clear. He took a deep breath and looked at her. "We'll get through this together. Trust me. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Even more captivating moments await you in the rest of the story." He worked on unfastening the seatbelt, but the freezing air had numbed his fingers. "Just hold on. I'll get you out," he said, trying to reassure her. After some effort, he managed to release the seatbelt and turned his attention to her trapped leg. He needed to lift the metal panel. "This might hurt a little, but I'm going to get you out of here no matter what," Jeremy told her. Using his right arm, he attempted to lift the panel. With his left arm still in a cast, all the strain fell on his right side. The cold was sapping his strength, but he refused to give up. Summoning all his energy, he managed to loosen the panel slightly. As the woman moved her legs slightly, her face contorted in pain. "Almost there," Jeremy encouraged her. With one final push, he freed her leg and pulled her out of the wreckage. Helping her out of the car, Jeremy said, "Try to stand up slowly." The woman attempted to get on her feet, but as soon as she put weight on her leg, she let out a scream of pain and collapsed to her knees. "No, I can't. My leg. It hurts so much," she cried, tears streaming down her face. Jeremy quickly realized she couldn't walk. The flames from the engine were growing and time was running out. He crouched down beside her. "Listen, I'm going to carry you. Hold on tight to my neck and don't let go. I'll get you to safety," he said firmly. The woman nodded, wrapping her arms around his neck. Jeremy supported her with his right arm around her waist, using his casted arm for balance. The weight pressed on his legs with each step, but stopping wasn't an option. He knew the car could explode at any moment. As they trudged through the snow, a sudden violent explosion erupted behind them. The sky lit up and Jeremy could feel the heat on his back. He paused for a brief moment before forcing himself to keep moving forward. Reaching the gas station, Jeremy used his foot to push the door open and gently set the woman down on the floor. He quickly grabbed a blanket and draped it over her. Her face was pale and exhausted, but her eyes glimmered with gratitude. "Thank you. You saved my life," she said weakly. Jeremy noticed the paleness on the woman's face. Her breathing was becoming rapid and shallow, and it was clear she was on the verge of losing consciousness. "Hey, don't you dare pass out. I've gotten you out of the car, but we're not done yet," Jeremy said as he carefully moved her to a warm corner inside the gas station. Wrapping the blanket tightly around her, he pulled out his phone and quickly dialed 911. "There's a woman here who's badly injured," he said urgently. "Her leg is in terrible shape and she's losing a lot of blood. We need an ambulance immediately." The operator's voice was calm but serious. "Understood, sir, an ambulance is on its way. In the meantime, you need to stop the bleeding by applying a tourniquet. Use fabric or a bandage if you have one. Keep monitoring her condition." Jeremy pressed the phone to his shoulder and rummaged through a storage cabinet, eventually finding an old first aid kit. Pulling out an elastic bandage, he moved back to the woman and tightly wrapped it just above her injured leg. He could see the pain on her face, but it had to be done. "If I don't do this, the blood loss will get worse." "Hold on for me," Jeremy said, tying the bandage as tightly as he could. The woman whimpered weakly but didn't resist anymore. Jeremy kept the phone pressed to his ear. "I've applied the tourniquet, but she's losing consciousness." "How much longer until they get here?" he asked, his voice filled with urgency. The operator reassured him, "The ambulance is very close. Keep talking to her and check her pulse." Jeremy leaned closer to the woman, watching her face as her eyes began to flutter shut. Hey, stay with me. What's your name? Can you tell me your name?" he asked desperately. The woman let out a deep breath and tilted her head to the side, slipping closer to unconsciousness. Jeremy's heart pounded. "No. Don't you dare leave me. You're still here," he shouted. At that moment, the sound of sirens filled the air. The ambulance raced down the snow-covered road toward the gas station. 2 paramedics jumped out and ran toward Jeremy. "What's her condition?" one of them asked. "Her left leg was pinned and she's lost a lot of blood. I applied a tourniquet, but she's unconscious now," Jeremy explained quickly, pointing to the bandage. The paramedics examined her. One of them looked at Jeremy and said, "You did a great job. The tourniquet was applied correctly, but her condition is critical. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." They carefully placed the woman on a stretcher and loaded her into the ambulance. Jeremy hesitated for a moment before stepping forward with resolve. "I'm coming with you," he said, climbing into the ambulance. As the ambulance sped through the snowy streets, one of the paramedics turned to Jeremy. "Her blood loss is severe. If we don't get a transfusion quickly, we could lose her," they warned. Jeremy felt his breath catch. He still didn't know who she was, but he was determined to help her hold on to life. When they reached the hospital, the woman was rushed to surgery. Jeremy stood in the hallway, his nerves stretched tight. One of the paramedics called out to a nurse, "We need O-negative blood. Contact the blood bank immediately." Hearing this, Jeremy froze for a moment. He knew his blood type was O-negative. He quickly approached the nurse. "I'm O-negative. If my blood matches, I can donate," he said, his voice firm but tinged with worry. The nurse paused, then nodded quickly. "That's great. We need to do a blood test immediately," she said, leading him to the testing room. After taking a sample, the nurse returned shortly after with good news. "Your blood is compatible. We'll prepare for the transfusion now." Without hesitation, Jeremy rolled up his sleeve, despite his other arm still being in a cast. "Let's do it," he said, his voice resolute. As the transfusion began, a sense of purpose filled him. "I can save her," he thought. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours before a doctor approached him. The transfusion was successful. "Thanks to you, her chances of survival have significantly improved. She's stable now but will need some time to recover," the doctor explained. Jeremy let out a deep breath, the weight on his shoulders lifting slightly. He still didn't know her name, but tonight he had done everything in his power to save her life. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of meaning and fulfillment he thought he'd lost forever. Jeremy was sitting in the hospital's rest area, feeling a sharp pain in his arm. When he carefully touched his left arm, he realized the pain intensified with pressure. A reflexive groan escaped his lips. A nurse nearby noticed the discomfort on his face and immediately approached him. "Is something wrong with your arm?" she asked. Jeremy gave a faint smile and replied, "It's just a little sore. I might have overexerted it during the rescue." But the nurse was firm. "This needs to be checked." "I'll call a doctor right away," she said before leaving the room. A short while later, a doctor came in and examined Jeremy's arm. "This arm was broken before, wasn't it?" the doctor asked. Jeremy nodded. "Yes, it was healing, but I might have pushed it too hard the other night while rescuing someone," he explained. The doctor recommended an X-ray and escorted him to the imaging room. When the results came back, the doctor informed Jeremy that his arm needed to be recast. "You've put a lot of strain on it, which disrupted the healing process. But even under these circumstances, your determination is truly admirable," the doctor said. Jeremy smiled faintly. "I just did what needed to be done," he murmured. As his arm was recast, Jeremy's thoughts wandered to the woman he had saved. "How is she? Will she be okay?" he asked. The doctor reassured him, "Her condition is stable. She's resting now and her family has been informed. Her name is Emily." Jeremy felt a sense of relief but couldn't shake the desire to see her. Later there was some commotion in the hospital corridor. A charismatic man in a sharp suit entered the lobby. Jeremy instantly recognized him as Emily's father. The man spoke with the doctors briefly before heading to her room. Meanwhile, Jeremy stayed in the rest area, waiting for his arm procedure to be completed. After some time, a doctor approached Jeremy. "You're free to go now. Or if you'd like, you can visit the person you rescued," the doctor suggested. Jeremy hesitated for a moment before deciding to see her. When he entered Emily's room, she was awake and her father sat beside her. Emily immediately turned her attention to Jeremy. "You," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "You saved me. I'll never forget what you did." Jeremy smiled gently. "I just did what anyone would have done," he replied. Emily's father stood up and extended his hand to Jeremy. "I can't thank you enough. You saved my daughter's life, and you did it with incredible courage and sacrifice," he said. Jeremy accepted the thanks but didn't want to make a big deal out of it. "Honestly, the only thing that matters is that she's okay," he said before excusing himself to leave. As he walked down the corridor, Emily's father followed him. "Jeremy, may I have a moment?" he asked. Jeremy stopped and turned to face him. "You saved my daughter's life. I feel like there's nothing I can do to repay you adequately, but I'd like to help you in some way," the man said. Jeremy quickly raised his hands. "Really, I don't need anything. I just did what I had to do," he said modestly. The man persisted. "What's your real job? Have you always worked at the gas station?" Jeremy hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm actually a chef, but life has taken me in a different direction," he said. The man listened attentively to his story. A week later, while Jeremy was working another night shift at the gas station, a car pulled up. Emily and her father stepped out. Emily was smiling warmly, walking with the help of a cane. "Jeremy, we came to see you," Emily said cheerfully. Her father added, "And we have a surprise for you." Jeremy looked at them, confused but curious. They invited him into the car, and after a short drive, they arrived at the town center. In front of a brand new, elegant restaurant, they stopped. Jeremy's name was displayed on the sign above the entrance. He stared at it in disbelief. What is this?" Jeremy asked, his eyes wide with shock. Emily's father smiled. "This is yours, Jeremy. Your very own restaurant. It's our way of saying thank you. You deserve this." Jeremy's eyes filled with tears. "This is too much. I can't accept this," he said, his voice trembling. The man gave him a kind smile. "No, it's exactly what you deserve. You risked everything to save my daughter's life. This is your fresh start," he said. Jeremy, his eyes filled with tears, looked at the restaurant sign. This is too much. I really can't accept it," he said. But Emily's father responded with a determined smile. "You deserve this, Jeremy. You risked your life to save my daughter. This is the least we can do to repay your efforts." Emily, leaning on her cane, approached Jeremy. "Someone like you shouldn't settle for less than you deserve in life. Let this restaurant be a fresh start for you," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. Jeremy took a deep breath and lowered his head slightly, thanking them. "I thought I'd lost everything in life. But now, I have a chance to start over. Thank you truly," he said. That day marked both a turning point and the beginning of a new life for Jeremy. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share your thoughts in the comments. I have many more inspiring stories like Jeremy's journey waiting for you here. See you in the next video.